And we are live. Prithvi, how long have you missed those words from the Panenka man? Because we are live after a long time, after ages, and it's not been a good start to the year. I mean, the worst possible thing that we are witnessing in our entire lives. But and we are in the lockdown, by the way. But football is back after a couple of months of break, and the German Bundesliga is back. Now, Prithvi and me could possibly go on up until the evening if it was the Premier League. And Prithvi is giving me those stares saying, "Topic पे आजा भाई, इतना don't run around the bush." But Prithvi, let's start by saying, how have you been in the lockdown? How has everything been?
Hi, Prasad. Thank you so much for asking me. It's been good, man. I mean, I know we're very fortunate that we are, getting this time for ourselves with a roof, with whatever we need at our disposal. And still a lot of people tend to cry and be ungrateful about the things we have. But I think we should be grateful that we're safe, and everyone that we know, most of our relatives are safe. And I would just hope that this fades away slowly and we eventually end up to a sustainable way to deal with the virus till the vaccine actually comes out.
Definitely, it's very heart wrenching to see so many people without food and essentials. But we can only pray that somehow they get it. But Prithvi, the main agenda of this episode is football is back. This is the Pan and Kavi podcast. This is episode 53, and we start off with the German Bundesliga. And it's not something which we view weekly, but it was good to see the ball being kicked around, and we have a lot to discuss. So let's start off with Borussia Dortmund's 4-0 win over Schalke. Dortmund clearly the fitter and you can say the better of the two.
Yeah, definitely. The fitter, the more skillful, and it was a resounding victory. I mean, there was only one winner in that game, and all of that with Jadon Sancho not even in the starting 11. I think it was, I mean, it was a little unusual for most of us to watch a game like that, wherein, there's no one in the stands, and the even the dugout, the players were sort of, there was a gap between two players wearing masks, and suddenly when you move on to the field, you have a mask on. But coming to the football part of it, I think it was, I mean, as clear a victory as it comes. Haaland again, the man who can't stop scoring,
Def-
starting, the onslaught with Torgan Hazard putting it a very good cross. It was a basic tap in for him. Guerrero with
Yeah,
a couple of goals and good goals, I mean, and Torgan Hazard with another brilliant goal, which rounded up the 4-0 win. I think it was,
definitely.
I mean, Schalke is no longer the force it was probably 10 years back when they had the likes of Huntelaar playing for them. But now I don't think they have too much of a chance to sort of, be the team that they once used to. Because I remember watching them compete for the top four, and I think they
Yeah,
were in Europe a while back as well, but they haven't been doing all that well. And I hope, some things turn around for them. But Borussia Dortmund are unstoppable at the time, at the current rate they're going, and the players that they've accumulated for not a lot of money is
mm,
commendable. I mean, Lucien Favre has done a tremendous job.
definitely. The way they reinvested and rebuilt. I mean, there are a few couple of things to look forward to, Prithvi. The first time, this is the first time in Bundesliga history that Borussia Dortmund managed to keep clean sheets both home and away against Schalke. So that's one thing for our listeners, our viewers who are going to see this. And Julian Brandt is one name who had multiple assists. I mean, this is the first time he's done it in his career in a Bundesliga game. So pretty much that fight, getting started right time as Dortmund have a 4 point deficit over Bayern, whom they meet by the way next week. And that takes me to the league leaders, the best of the best, the champion of champions, and Bayern Munich. 2-0 win over Union Berlin. Any other result that you expected or something like that?
I mean, there was only one winner when the game began, and there was only one winner when it ended. I think
Yeah. So that was,
Bayern.
yeah.
Yeah, please go on.
Yeah, no, no, it's back. And yeah, so we were talking about Bayern and we were talking about Union Berlin. So yeah, you were saying there was only one winner. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, it was a pretty boring game to be honest because uh, a there was no atmosphere. B there weren't a lot of goals, and what they had to Bayern were coming up against a team which wanted to defend pretty deep, and I think Mueller got off to a flying start when that goal was disallowed. It was an offside goal, so they thought probably if they I think it was the first few minutes when he'd actually ended up scoring. Had he sort of got that goal, probably they would have built a little more momentum, and the morale uh, of the opposition would have been a little low. But I think right now, what of what I've seen, especially the thumping that Chelsea got against Bayern, I'm pretty sure they've got a
yeah,
very good team. And more importantly, what I actually noticed in the team was there was a Lucas Hernandez who was on the bench. There was Kingsley Coman who was on the bench. And in spite of that, I think there was the guy from Inter Milan, Ivan Perisic. He was on the bench. And in spite of all of that, they did so well. So I think that right now, when I look at Bayern Munich, I see a lot of squad depth which they probably lacked in the last 3-4 years. They've bought well and they've developed players like the former Arsenal guy, who I'm sure you would be
yeah,
wishing. I mean, if I were an Arsenal fan, I would wish he was back at Arsenal, or we wouldn't have sold him. But Chelsea have had their fair share of luck with Kevin De Bruyne, Romelu Lukaku. So I'm not the right person to
yeah.
speak about it. But yes, I do think that they've put together a very solid team which can actually dominate not only Germany but Europe in the coming years.
And by the way, credit to Hansi Flick there because 16 games, 50 goals, and that's a new Bundesliga record there. I mean, of reaching that milestone that I was coming across, and now it was Union Berlin, so another new opponent, and Manuel Neuer has now kept 35 clean sheets against 35 different Bundesliga sides. So even that was a record that stood this weekend. So, and by the way, since we are talking about youngsters and we are talking about the very young Kingsley Coman, he made his 100th appearance this weekend. And if you know that Kingsley Coman has all those records, many of those records to his name at such a young age, even though he's made in substitute appearances and even though he's starred in many of them, but he has them. So 4 point lead Prithvi over Dortmund. Bayern have a 4 point lead over Dortmund. Leipzig
Yep.
dropped points. Gladbach are looking good, but they're still behind. There's a question from our very own Puneet, who might be watching this. He says, "Why haven't Bundesliga performed well in the CL in the last few years? Now we are seeing better competition amongst them. 2, 3 teams again, 3, 4 teams again. Why haven't they performed well in the CL?" Hmm. So I think,
Yep.
yeah,
No, if
Prithvi.
you to ask me, I think that whenever a team or a league sort of does well in the CL, and if it's a big league, I'm not talking about the French league or something, when there's a good influx of youth coming in. So if you actually look at the last season, we had a lot of good English young players coming in, be it from the likes of Tottenham or from Liverpool. We had, the likes of Alexander Arnold at such a young age, who was starting at right back at one of the at the Champions of Europe. We had a lot of young players with Tottenham as well. So I think what has happened is there's been a slight resurgence of the young players coming out of Germany. So which was stagnant for the past 3-4 years. Because if you look at the team 10 years behind, I mean, most of the players retained their spots in the World Cup as well, the previous World Cup. So, and quite a lot of them would have retained their spot in the Euros as well. But I'm sure now, when we look at it, there's a influx of new youth in Germany, which I think is pivotal for any team, either competing in the Euros, the World Cup, or even the Champions League. Because at the end of it, the same core players are going to there. Lewandowski is going to get you 40 goals a season every year, but you need those young players to come in and play well for you. And I think they bought really well. They've also bought a lot of foreign players. It's not that they're only relying on the German players. They've bought well, and they've sort of tightened the loose ends, which they did have. I think Bayern Munich for the last couple of years had stagnated a little bit. There wasn't a lot of young talent coming in, because of which, they did, although they didn't perform pretty badly. I think they made the semis last season, but I think they weren't the superpower that they used to be. But I can see them doing really well in Europe for the next, I think, 3 years, and they might even win the Champions League.
So, a part of that discussion is Robert Lewandowski getting 40 goals, fifth consecutive season. What do you have to say on that? I mean, spectacular striker, someone who you would love to have in your team with that determination to bang in goals, week after week. And Prithvi, there's a comparison with of him versus Erling Haaland. Who do you prefer right now in your team?
Y- Yeah,
Yeah. So we're talking about Erling Haaland.
yeah. So
Oh, yeah, so we are talking about
Erling Haaland versus Lewandowski.
Lewandowski versus
I
Erling
think
Haaland.
it's a little unfair on Lewandowski to be compared to a youngster who's just making the ranks. I think Lewandowski has done it time and again, be it with the likes of Borussia Dortmund when he was under Jurgen Klopp, and be it under the various managers at Bayern Munich. He's performed under each and every manager, and you feel that this
Yeah,
season probably he won't get that tally. He's getting a little older. He's getting he's approaching his 30s, so he might not be the striker he once was.
mm,
But every year he comes in and he doesn't surprise us, because he is what we expect from Lewandowski is goals, and what we get is goals. Haaland, I think, is a tremendous prospect, but there have been a lot of players who've been really promising players in their teens, and then eventually gone out the wrong way. You look at a player like Robinho, who was immensely talented, and they were suiting him to be the next Ballon d'Or winner, when he was coming up the ranks. But then you know how his career went eventually, and he faded away. So I think it's very good that there is a young player from Norwich, which is not a superpower when it comes to football, but
yeah,
it's heartening to see a player coming through the ranks and doing so well. And I'm very happy that he made a move to a club like Dortmund, which is like the best club for youth development across Europe, in my opinion, because had he gone to a bigger club, he would have stayed on the fringes for a little longer. I think he's made the right career choice. So he just
and
has to build
probably
on it, and
yeah,
I think,
and probably Lucien Favre
yep,
is accumulating the players around him. That's going to really help the cause. And he's been firing goals. He's the hottest property right now. Current, if you look at the goal versus uh, matches ratio. But Prithvi, the big question now that we started our episode with, is this Bundesliga return safe? I mean, with the coronavirus in the air and a lot of tests happening, with as you said, there's social distancing on the bench, but once you come on the field, then you're pretty close to each other, and it's a contact sport. Also, the celebrations, the let's say social distancing celebrations. So, what's going to be what's the way forward? I mean, is Bundesliga safe according to you at the moment?
see, I mean, I'm no medical expert or something of that sort, but I think that if you look at the numbers, a huge amount of their patients have recovered. I think they have 24,000 active cases, or 23 to 24,000 active cases as we speak, and the total cases were 177K. So there's been, I mean, it's on the verge of fading away. So I think it is comparatively pretty safe. But again, I think what will happen is that it will give an impetus to other European countries like an Italy, a Spain, or an England to sort of hurry the process of starting the league, which could be, not very good for them, because as we all know, the number of cases in the UK, Italy, and Spain are much worse than Germany. So I would think that as long as the precautions are being taken, I think it's pretty pretentious in a lot of ways that you're a meter away or 2 meters away on the bench, and suddenly you take your mask off and you're going on the field to play. So I don't think that is something which is going to help. And the social distancing celebration, you share the same locker room, you share the same bus. I think if one were to contract corona, there will be a lot of people who will actually end up catching the virus. But I
And
think,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, but correct. I mean, that's where we are coming to. One the people, the crowd, the fans. We're going to see a lot of empty stadiums if even if the leagues resume and want to finish this season. I mean, would we see this happening in the better half of next season as well? Even Puneet's asked that question. Even we had that question in our ranks. Would the crowdless, games be the norm even for a better half of the next season? I mean, at least this year.
I think there's a good chance of that happening. And considering the circumstances, I think that is what it should be. I think even if there is, you want to sort of get active participation of the crowd, it has to be in phases. So like you can start with a 10% participation, then make it 20, then make it 30, as and when things get better. Because I think Germany is pretty sorted that way. It's not as bad as the other European countries or maybe the US, but I think it is still very important. I mean, the players go out and play for the fans. There's no other reason to do that apart from a few million bucks that they make. But
Yeah. So, correct. I mean, yeah, we do miss the crowd. We do miss.
there are so many fans around the world, not only in Germany but around the world, who watch the game, and it may not really affect the revenues as much because most clubs end up making money from TV rights. But the atmosphere is something which every football fan, whether watching it live or whether watching it on the television, is something that will truly miss.
Yeah. So, Prithvi, we've had, something that we've had football back. We just hope that we are still waiting for the other leagues probably to announce their returns, etc. I mean, Serie A returns on the 30th of June. That's what I'm hearing. We hear that the Premier League might be back 1st June, after 1st June, let's say. Quick thoughts on a few other things, about let's keeping this episode about Germany. We have we have Bayern Munich versus Borussia Dortmund next week. This weekend there will be BVB versus Wolfsburg and Bayern versus Frankfurt. But then the game after that is BVB versus Bayern. Is that the title decider? Is that the past point? It's decided. I mean, a draw or a win for a Bayern, they keep their lead. A win, a Dortmund might just be that getting them back. Hmm.
Yeah, I think what I understand out of it is that if at all Bayern, I'm not sure a draw may be a title decider, but if at all Bayern win, that'll be a 7 point lead over Borussia Dortmund, and I don't see them sort of getting back into the title race unless Bayern mess up really bad. So I think if Bayern win that game and they also win the game of the weekend, I think they're going to just steer away with the competition because I think under the new management, Bayern have performed exceedingly well, 50 goals in the last 15 games, I suppose. So that's crazy. So I don't see Bayern slipping up if they end up winning the game against Borussia. But if Borussia actually end up winning that game, then it's going to be a nervy title race, and that's what we want as fans. We want a title race. Eventually, whoever wins it, it's all right. But as long as there is a title, as long as there is a fight for the title, we would love to watch it. Unlike it is in England right now, even if the league continues, we know who's winning.
And many of there's one friend of mine who's sending me messages daily. That just void the league. cancel the league. Do not give it to anyone. And by the way, that's not a Man United fan. So but the Premier League is a totally different topic. So the German Bundesliga football is back. And as of now, Bayern with a 4 point lead at the top, Borussia Dortmund second. Then you've got Gladbach and you've got RB Leipzig, who are currently dropping a few points here and there. But we'll get back to that in the next episode. So, Prithvi, this has been a fun comeback episode on YouTube, and let's connect post the BVB Bayern game because there will be
Definitely.
more end, but definitely all eyes on that big BVB versus Bayern game. So, guys, don't make sure to listen to this episode. Prithvi will be back next week as well, and let's have Puneet as well if he can make it to the podcast. Let's get the gang back together.
Yeah, I mean it's been a while, and let's do that, man. Even we were
Yeah.
planning to, do a stream, and we'll definitely do it next week.
Yeah, so let's. Here's your host Prasad signing out with Prithvi on this episode of the Pan and Kavyu podcast.